In episode 4, we get more backstory on Joe's childhood. His dad would beat him, but his mother was a philanderer, and an overall pretty shitty mom. She would go cheat on his dad and leave him in a grocery store for hours, and then when they would get back, the dad would want to know where they were, and he would go to Joe. But Joe would keep his mom secret and just endure the abuse. His mother would then patch up the wounds and one time said, you know what? One of these days, I'm going to kill that guy. And that probably explains why Joe's so fucked up. But in present day, Joe's relationship with Love is going great. Everything that would have annoyed him in the past with a relationship like Beck or Candace isn't annoying him anymore. Such as her brother 40 texting him to collaborate on a writing project because he loves the way that Joe thinks. But when he's about to text 40 back, Love says, hey, when you text him back, don't tell him about us. Anytime I start seeing somebody, he gets really jealous and territorial, so just don't mention it. We'll wait a couple weeks before we let the cat out of the bag. But 40's persistence pays off, and Love and Joe cancel their plans for the weekend so Joe can help 40. But before he helps 40, he needs to do laundry, and as he's doing so, Delilah comes bursting downstairs, demanding to know what Ellie is doing. She says she's doing a project, but it is not for Henderson. She's no longer hanging out with him. He just simply drinks too much. But when Delilah leaves the room, Joe overhears a conversation between Ellie and her friend that Ellie caught the spyware that Delilah put on her phone. The friend says, are you sure it was her? And she says, well, who else would it possibly be? I'm not even going to tell her. It's best that she actually thinks that we're no longer talking. But of course, it wasn't Delilah that put the spyware on her phone. It was Joe, and Joe is hearing all of this. Luckily, Joe kept Hendy's laptop, and he never unconnected iMessages, and he can still see all their text messages. And while he could tell Delilah, he could also just take care of it himself. And since Henderson is out of town, this is the perfect time to get back in the house and find that room. But he doesn't want to break in, and he needs help from the real Will Biddleheim. He tells Will that he does actually want to let him go, because deep down he knows to have a relationship with Love, he's going to have to let this guy out of the cage. So he tells Will, if you can figure out a way that you can promise me that you will not tell the police, I'll let you go. But in the meantime, I need help getting into this guy's house. So thanks to Google Maps, they see the security sign outside of Henderson's house, and Will is able to figure out what frequency they need to jam. And sure enough, Joe goes to buy a frequency jammer, and it works. He's in. He finds the kink room hidden behind a bookshelf, and it's as creepy as it sounds. It's also very clean, though, because there's a Roomba down there. But when the Roomba knocks into the fireplace, he sees a loose tile. And when he pulls that tile, he sees a cigar box inside. And when he looks in the cigar box, there's a bunch of pictures of girls knocked out with their clothes kind of ripped off that he took. And one of those pictures is, in fact, Delilah. So he takes those pictures and leaves them in an unmarked envelope under Delilah's door so that she can break open this story. After he goes all true detective, he heads on over to Anavern to meet Love for brunch. But it's not just Love, it's Love and all of her friends. And this is another example of something that would have annoyed him with Beck, but he doesn't mind talking to her friends, even though he doesn't understand anything they're talking about. And Love surprised Joe with their friends because she didn't want to tell him that they were coming, because she admits that if it were her, she would end up looking them up on social media just like Joe did. Now the group is having fun until they're interrupted by 40, who shows up pissed off that he wasn't invited to their quote coming out party. He's supposed to have a big meeting on the books today with a producer, but now he can't even focus because he's so mad. He lets him know, I knew you guys were fooling around this entire time, but the fact you couldn't even tell me hurts me. 40 proceeds to throw a temper tantrum and just leaves. That night, Joe's hanging out with Love, and she's baking her heart out, concerned about 40 because he's not getting back to her. And Joe thinks that the two need boundaries, but he also doesn't think it's his place to probably say it. So he comes up with another solution. Let's include him in a brunch. Let's include him in a beach day. Let's just include him in our lives. And Love loves the idea, and it brings down her anxiety a bit. The next morning, Will is woken up by 40 and Love is cutting 40's hair, and 40 is in a much better mood today. He apologizes for the way he acted, but also says that he ended up canceling that lunch, and he's going to meet with that producer after the producer returns from South by Southwest, so he can continue to brainstorm with Joe if Joe's up for it. And of course, Joe says yes, but he doesn't really want to. But 40 needs a new suit for the meeting and needs Love to help him pick one out. And he only wants Love. He doesn't want Joe. The problem is, Joe and Love have made plans that day, and 40 basically makes them cancel the plans. And this is really the first time where Joe's been pissed off at something that 40 or her friends have done in their relationship. But there's not much that he can do about it. So after they leave, Joe heads downstairs and overhears Ellie and her friend. And Ellie says to her friend, hey, text me to ask me to sleep over tonight so I have a built-in excuse for Delilah. Henderson's throwing a movie screening and I'm going to go to it at his house. And Joe is wondering why Hendy is still walking around and not in handcuffs after he gave Delilah the pictures. He sees Delilah in the basement and gingerly starts asking about the situation, saying that he saw some girl drop the pictures off. And Delilah says that she gave them to a cop friend, but the cop friend said there's not much that they can do because Henderson isn't in any of the pictures. It's a very generic background in all the pictures. They didn't find them on Henderson. They didn't find him in his house. And really, whoever took these pictures kind of screwed her over because there's nothing the cops can actually do with them. And all Delilah can really do is hide those pictures in her house until somebody breaks the story and then she could pull them out. And Joe feels really guilty about this and he's trying to figure out a way to make it right, but he gets a text message from 40 asking about writing and he completely forgot about it and has to put the Delilah situation on the back burner. So he heads on over to a Navern to help 40 write, and he's basically telling 40 anything he wants to hear to get out of this writing session. He goes as far as to tell 40 he's a genius, and 40 thinks, well, that's great, we should just continue to write all night, but Joe says, no, we shouldn't. You know what you should do? You should go to South by Southwest and you should find that producer and pitch him this idea because it's that good. And in reality, Joe doesn't think it's that good. He just wants to get out of there. But luckily for Joe, 40 loves this idea and heads off to South by Southwest, which frees up Joe to devote his time to the Henderson situation. So Joe hits the storage locker to get some supplies, and the real Will Buttelheim is wondering what he's doing because he's actually worried that Joe is going to kill somebody. And whether he's just trying to appease Joe or he actually believes it, he says, I don't think you're a murderer because I've dealt with people on the dark web, I've dealt with some shady individuals, and you're just not that. Deep down, I think you're actually a good person. And Joe is wondering if Will is feeding him a line or not, but then Joe thinks maybe I really have changed. As he's leaving the storage facility, he gets a frantic call from Love saying, did you tell 40 he should go to South by Southwest? Joe explains, well, yeah, kind of. And Love is pissed off because now Love has to go to South by Southwest to be his, quote, sober companion. And that's not at all what Joe wanted. But at the moment, he needs to focus on taking Henderson down. He breaks into Hendy's house and sees Ellie knock on the door, and Hendy explains, look, all the people that were going to come, they all kind of called out sick. And Ellie asks him, well, will you finally look at my short film? And Hendy plays the anti-pervert. He says, no, that'd be weird if an underage girl is here with me alone in my house. But after Ellie insists, he, quote, begrudgingly lets her in. The two watch the film and Hendy loves it, and then Ellie wants to give him a pitch, but Hendy says, I never listen to a pitch without a drink. Do you want something? And Joe watches Hendy pour her a drink and then roofie that drink. So Joe needs to think fast and he creates a diversion by throwing a salt shaker, get Hendy out of the room, and then he walks over to Hendy's drink and roofies the shit out of that. And this causes Hendy to get knocked out before Ellie. Now, it's not like Ellie doesn't end up falling asleep, but it gives Will enough time to get Henderson down to the dungeon, strap him up, and get a confession out of him. He wakes up Henderson by blasting some music, and all the while, Henderson is blindfolded so he can't see what Joe looks like. And Joe is telling him that he wants a confession. He starts cutting up his arms a little bit because pain causes truth, and Henderson gives in. All right, I'll confess. Joe puts on a Henderson mask to cover his own face and takes the blindfold off of Henderson and starts to film this, quote, confession. But Henderson plays the victim. He says he was abused as a child, and that's probably where it stems from. And Joe is getting more and more pissed off. Joe almost blows a gasket when Henderson says, well, that's probably what happened with you, right? I mean, we're all a little fucked up inside. That's probably what happened with you. And it pisses off Joe so much that he rips the Henderson mask off his face and screams at him, I'm nothing like you. But then Joe realized he just fucked up because Henderson knows who he is. Henderson immediately says, wait, you were at the party. You were trying to be the hero, and now you're trying to be the hero now. Henderson then makes a break for it, but Joe fights him off on the steps and throws him down the stairs, and Henderson cracks his head on the back of the wall, and Joe knows, oh my God, he's dead. And Joe is kind of shocked because he thought he had changed, but then he just says, look, this is nothing more than an accident. Accidents happen. And as he's standing there looking at the body, trying to figure out what to do with it, blood from his nose drips onto the floor. And now he's got another issue because he's got to clean up the DNA. So he goes upstairs and grabs some cleaning supplies, but when he drops a bucket, it wakes up Ellie. He pulls out his phone real quick to distract her, saying that your sister's looking for you, and she's pretty pissed off, and Ellie gets out of there. When Joe gets downstairs, that Roomba, though, has smeared up Joe's blood and Hendy's blood, and now he needs to get rid of everything. So he carefully cleans up the spots, throws the Roomba, the bloody rags, and for some reason Henderson's headphones into a trash bag, and figures that the cops will think that Henderson slit his wrist, thought better of it, went upstairs, passed out, fell back, cracked his head, and it was a suicide. When Joe gets home that night, he has that trash bag in his hand, and as he's crossing the street, he gets stopped by that cop that knows Delilah. And the cop is about to arrest him for jaywalking and wants to know what's in the bag, and this is the moment where Joe thinks, all right, the jig is up, I'm going to get caught. But the first thing that the cop pulls out is those headphones. And Joe says, look, I was just going to donate them to Goodwill, but if you want them, you can have them. So the cop takes the headphones, gives the trash bag back to Joe, and says, I was going to write you up for jaywalking, but just go home. So somehow, Joe once again dodged a bullet. And at this point, Joe really thinks that this is a fresh start in Los Angeles. So he goes to the real Will Buttelheim and brings him everything he would need to create a fake identity, and he lets him out. He makes Will promise not to tell the cops and tells him to go to Manila, be with the fiancé you've never met, but just go. And he knows that this might be the stupidest thing he's ever done, but he also knows to have an actual future with love, he can't have a guy living in a storage facility in a cage. But down in Austin at South by Southwest, right before 40 and Love are about to go into a screening, 40 mentions to Love that he's met a new girl, and it's like love at first sight. When the new girl walks over, it's Candace, and she's saying her name is Amy. Thank you for watching this recap. If you do not see the next one up in the corner right there on the end screen, don't worry, it'll be up shortly. please consider following the channel. That'd be cool. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't, there's a thumbs down button for a reason.